Thank you so much. Thank you. That was really an amazing experience for me today because this actually was the first live gig in front of people in 3 years. So, whoa. So I was kind of scared today, but thank you so much for being so kind and being here today. And now enjoy the CreepyPasta show with us.
Hi everybody. Hi, it's me, MrCreepyPasta. One more big hand for Myuu, the dark piano, for the wonderful performance. Incredible. I even had to step out there when I saw the horror medley because I wanted to see the craziness you were going to be doing this year, and it's just, oh, I love seeing that. Okay, cool. We have story. We're going to be trying something a little bit different. This is SanJapan 13, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. One, because I haven't seen my friend here in like 3 years, so let's do something new there. But also, this is a horror SanJapan. So since this is going to be horror, I didn't want to do the same thing that I've done for every other year that they've had me here, which is always doing like a lesson about how horror is made in 3 parts and do a couple of different ghost stories here and there. What we're going to try, and hopefully works, is we're going to be trying to do one story. It's just going to be one story tonight. It is a long story, but I think this is a fan favorite that I've seen a lot of people mention before that they've really loved. But it's a really dynamic story with a lot of characters, which I'm going to try to do all of them here along with you guys. And I'm pretty sure Myuu said that he had something really cool cooked up for background music for this one. Oh, okay. So this is a story by C.K. Walker. And this is a story called Borrassca. There we go. Okay, no worries. In a second, this is a story called Borrassca.
Okay, ready.
Okay, cool, yeah, cool. It's a long story, but it's one that you've never heard before. It's the story about a place that dwells on the mountain, a place where bad things happen. And you may think you know about the bad things, you may decide that you have it all figured out, but you don't. Because the truth is worse than monsters or men. See, at first I was upset when they told me that we were moving to some little town in the Ozarks. I remember staring at my dinner plate while I listened to my sister throw a temper tantrum befitting of a 14-year-old at the time. She cried, she pleaded, and then she cursed at my parents. She threw a bowl at my dad, told him that it was his fault. Mom told Whitney to calm down, but she stormed off, slamming every door in the house on the way out. I secretly blamed my dad as well. I mean, I'd heard the whispers too. My dad had done something wrong, something bad. And the sheriff's department had reassigned him to some little out-of-the-way county to save face. My parents didn't want me to know this, but I did. I was 9, so it didn't take me too long to warm up to the idea of a change. I mean, it was like an adventure. New house, new school, new friends. Whitney, of course, felt the opposite. Moving to a new school at her age is hard. Moving away from her new boyfriend, however, was even harder. While the rest of us packed up the things and said our goodbyes, Whitney sulked and cried and threatened to run away from home. But a month later, when we pulled up to our new house in Drisking, Missouri, she was sitting right next to me, texting viciously on her phone. Thankfully, we moved over the summer, and I had months of free time to explore the town. And when Dad started his new job at the sheriff's office, Mom drove us around the city, commenting on this and that. The city was much, much smaller than St. Louis, but it was a lot nicer. I mean, there was no bad areas, and the entire town looked like something you'd see on a postcard. Drisking was built in a mountain valley surrounded by healthy forest land with walking trails and crystal clear lakes. And I was 9. It was summer, and this was heaven. We'd only been living in Drisking a week or so when our next-door neighbor came to introduce themselves, Mr. and Mrs. Landing, and their 10-year-old Kyle. Now, while our parents talked and drank mimosas, I watched the Landys' lanky, red-headed son as he hung out in the doorway, shyly eyeing the PS2 in the living room. Do you play? I asked. He shrugged. Not really. Do you wanna? I just got Tekken 4. Kyle glanced at his mom, who had just been handed her third mimosa. Yeah, sure. And that afternoon, with the ease and simplicity of our age, Kyle and I became the best of friends. We spent the cool summer morning outside exploring the Ozarks and the hot afternoons in my living room playing the PS2. He introduced me to the only other kid in the neighborhood our age, a skinny, quiet girl named Kimber. She was shy but friendly and was always up for anything. Kimber kept up with us so well that she quickly became the third wheel in our tricycle. With my dad at work all the time, my mom consumed with her new friendships and my sister locked away in her room all day. The summer was ours to take, and take it we did. Kyle and Kimber showed me where all the best hiking trails were, where lakes were, and where they were the most accessible by bike, and where the best stores in town were. By the time the first day of school rolled around in September, I knew that I was home. On the last Saturday before school, Kyle and Kimber told me that they were going to take me somewhere special, somewhere that we hadn't been yet. The triple tree. What's a triple tree? I asked. Oh, it's totally awesome. It's this totally huge tree house out in the woods, Kyle said. Whatever, Kyle, come on. You guys, if there's a freaking tree house, would you at least show it to me already? Nah, we would've. Kyle shook his head. There's a ceremony for first-timers and everything. Now, Kimber nodded eagerly in agreement, her dark orange curls bouncing off of her tiny shoulders. Yep, it's true, Sam. If you enter the treehouse without the proper ceremony, you'll disappear and then you'll die. My face fell. Now I knew they were making fun of me. That's a lie. You guys are lying to me. No, we're not, Kimber insisted. Yeah, we'll show you. We just have to get a knife for the ceremony, and then we'll go. Wait, hang on, what? Why do you need a knife? Is it a blood ceremony? No way, Kimber promised. You just have to say some words, and then you carve your name into the triple tree. Yeah, it takes like 1 minute, Kyle agreed. And it's a really cool treehouse? I asked. Oh yeah, Kyle promised. Okay, I guess. I'll do it then. Kyle insisted on using the same knife that he used for his own ceremony, but we paid a price to get it. Mrs. Landy just happened to be at home with her youngest son, Parker, and despite Kyle's many objections, his mother insisted that we take his 6-year-old brother with him. Mom, we're just gonna go to the tree house. It's only for older kids. Parker can't go. I don't care if you're gonna go see the Exorcist movie marathon. You're taking your brother with you. I need a break. Kyle, can you understand that? And I'm sure that your friends won't mind. She flashed Kimber and me a challenging look. Right? Not at all. I nodded in agreement. Kyle made a loud, dramatic sigh and then called his brother. Parker, put your shoes on. We're leaving now. I met the youngest Landy several times before. Found that he was unlike his older brother in looks and in disposition. While Kyle was a wild, excitable fireball with hair to match, I found Parker to be an anxious, fidgety boy with small eyes and dark brown hair. We got on our bikes and we made our way to a lesser-known hiking trail a few miles away. I'd asked before where the trail led when we had ridden across it several weeks before, and Kyle had given me the underwhelming answer of, nowhere interesting. So we pulled up to the trailhead and leaned our bikes against the wooden sign, one that read West Rim Prescott Ore Trail. Why are so many trails around here named Prescott? I asked. Is this Prescott Mountain or something? Kimber laughed. No, dummy, it's because of the Prescotts. You know, the family that lives in the mansion up on Fairmount. Mr. Prescott and his son Jimmy own like half the businesses in town. More than half, Kyle added. Like, which ones? Like, does he own the GameStop? The only store in Drisking that I really cared about? I don't know about that one. Kyle would look around, and the 4 bikes clicked when the bar was put into place. Then he spun the numbers on the dial. but like the hardware store, the pharmacy, Gilton's on 2nd, and the newspaper. Did they start this town? I asked. Nah, mining started the town. I think I want to go home. Parker had been so quiet, I completely forgot he was there. We can't go home, Kyle rolled his eyes. Mom said I have to bring you. Now, come on, it's like a 2-mile walk. No, I want to take my bike, Parker answered. Too bad, we're getting off the trail. I don't want to go, I want to stay with the bikes. Don't be a wussy. I'm not. Kyle, be nice, Kimber hissed. He's only 5. I'm 6. Sorry, 6, you're 6. Kimber smiled at him. Right, fine. You can hold your hand if he wants, but he's gotta come, he's coming. Kyle turned and started up the trail. Parker's face fell into an undignified frown, but when the charmer Kimber stuck her hand out and wiggled her fingers at him, he took it. Kyle was right. It wasn't a long walk, only a half a mile down the trail, and then another half-mile hike on the well-treaded path up the mountain. It was a steep climb, though. And by the time we got to the treehouse, I was winded. So, what do you think? Kyle asked excitedly. I studied the tree as I caught my breath. It's pretty awesome, I smiled. And it was. I mean, they hadn't lied. The treehouse was the biggest that I'd ever seen. It had multiple rooms, and there were actual curtains on the windows. A sign above the door said Ambercott Fort, and a rope ladder hung below the threshold that was missing several planks. I'm going up first, yelled Parker, but Kimber caught his arm. You have to do the ceremony first, or else you'll disappear, she reminded him. That'd be fine with me, Kyle grumbled. I was eager to get to the fort myself. Here, give me the knife. I held out my hand. Kyle smiled and dug the switchblade out of his pocket. There's some space on the back to carve your name. I opened up the knife, walked around the tree looking for an empty spot. There were so many names on the tree that I had to crunch down and look near the bottom since I couldn't reach any higher. I spotted both Kyle and Kimber's carvings on the tree, and I finally found a spot that I liked near the ladder. I bit my tongue, and I carved Sam W. into a blank spot on the bark underneath someone else's name, Paul S. Parker went next, but had so much trouble with the knife that Kyle had to do it for him. All right, let's go. I ran over to the rope ladder. Wait, Kyle yelled. You have to say the words first. Oh yeah, okay. What are they? Kimber sang them out. Underneath the triple tree, there is a man who waits for me. And should I go or should I stay, my fate's the same. Either way. That's creepy, I said. What does it mean? Kimber shrugged. Nobody knows anymore. It's just tradition. Okay, can you say it one more time, but slower? Once Parker and I had recited the poem, we were ready to go. I climbed the rope ladder first and took a stock of my new surroundings. The treehouse was more or less empty, just a dirty rug here and there and some trash, old soda cans, beer cans, fast food wrappers. I went room to room, 4 in total, and found nothing of real interest until the last one. An old mattress lay in the corner and piles of musty, ripped clothing scattered the floor. Did like a hobo live here or something? I asked. Nah, this room has been like this for as long as I can remember, Kyle said. It smells gross, I said. Kimber walked up to the threshold but refused to go any further. It's not the smell that freaks me out, it's that. She pointed up to the ceiling and I raised my eyes to read what was written. Road to the gates of hell. Mile marker 1. What does it mean? I asked. That's just older kids being dicks, Kyle said. Come on, I'll show you the best part of the treehouse. We walked back into the first room and Parker looked up at us and smiled, pointing down to what he had clumsily carved into the wooden floor. Fart, Kyle read. It's hilarious, Parker. He rolled his eyes, but his little brother didn't pick up on the sarcasm and smiled proudly. Kimber sat down on the floor next to Parker, and I sat on his other side. Kyle took the knife from his brother, then walked across the room and wedged the blade between 2 planks on the wooded wall. He pushed, and the board gave way, opening up a small secret compartment on the wall. Kyle took something out and pushed the plank back until it was flush with the others. Okay, check it out. He turned around and proudly held up 2 cans of Miller Lite beer. Whoa, I said. Ew, warm beer? That's gross. How did you even know it was there? Kimber asked. Phil Saunders told me. Are we gonna drink it? I asked. Hell yeah, we're gonna drink it. Kyle came and sat down in our circle, popped open the first beer and offered it to Kimber. She eyed it like he was trying to hand her a dirty diaper. Come on, Kimmy, don't call me that. Then she reluctantly took the open beer. She smelled it, made a face, then pinched her nose and took a small swig. Kimber shuddered. That was even grosser than I imagined. I don't want any. I'll tell Mom, Parker said quickly as the beer passed in front of him to me. Good, because you ain't getting any, Kyle promised. And you won't tell Mom. I put on my best poker face and took a long, deep swallow of the warm beer before I had the chance to smell it. It was a poor decision. And when I retched, the foul yellow liquid went all over my shirt. Oh man, now I'm gonna smell like beer. We spent the next hour and a half drinking the 2 cans of Miller Lite, and after a while, the taste grew more tolerable. Honestly, I couldn't tell if I was becoming a man or actually getting drunk. I really hoped it was the former. When the last drop of the last beer was consumed, we spent 20 minutes trying to determine if we were drunk. Kyle assured us that he was wasted, while Kimber wasn't sure. I didn't think that I was, but I failed all of our drunk tests. Kimber was in the middle of reciting the alphabet backwards when a loud, metallic grinding suddenly pierced the calm mountain air, like a gunshot. Kimber stopped talking. We spent a few minutes staring at each other, waiting for the noise to end. Parker curled into Kimber and put his hands over his ears, and after what seemed like 10 whole minutes, the sound ended as suddenly as it had begun. What was that? I asked Parker multiple times into Kimber's sweatshirt. Do you guys know? I tried again. Kimber stared at her feet as she crossed and uncrossed them. Well? It's nothing, Kyle answered finally. We hear it sometimes in town. It's not a big deal. It's louder up here. Well, what's been making that sound? Borrassca, Kimber whispered without taking her eyes off her feet. Who's that? I asked. Not a who, it's where, Kyle answered. It's a place. Another town? No, it's a place in the woods. Oh. Bad things happen there, Kimber said more to herself than to me. Like what? Bad things. Yeah, don't ever try to find it, dude, Kyle said behind me, or bad things will happen to you too. But like, what bad things? I turned around, Kyle shrugged. Kimber stood up and walked over to the rope ladder. We better go. I have to go home to my mom. We climbed down the ladder one by one and then started to walk back to the trailhead in an unfamiliar silence. I was dying of curiosity about Borrassca, but I couldn't decide if it was appropriate to be asked about. So who lives there? Where? Borrassca. The skin men? Kyle laughed. Look, only babies like Parker believe in the skin men. Like men who are skin? Like their skin is gone? I asked excitedly. Yeah, that's what some kids say. But most of us stop believing in that when we turn to double digits, Kyle said. I looked back at Kimber, who was still 9, like me, but she was staring down the trail, ignoring us. It seemed to be the end of the conversation, and by the time we reached our bikes, the awkwardness was gone, and we were giggling, trying to decide if we were too drunk to bike home. School started 2 days later, and I'd completely forgotten about Borrassca by that time. When my dad pulled up to the curb to drop me off that morning, he locked the doors before I could get out. Not so fast, he laughed. As your father, I get the privilege of giving you a hug and telling you to have a good day of school. But Dad, I gotta meet Kyle at the flag before first bell. And you will, but you give me a hug first. In a few years, you'll be driving yourself to school. Let me be your dad while I still can. Fine, I said, exacerbated. I leaned over to give my dad a quick hug. Thank you. Go meet your friend. Your mom will be waiting here to pick you up at 3:40. I know, Dad. Why can't I take the bus like Whitney? When you're 12, you can take the bus. He smiled and he unlocked the doors. Till then, I get to drop you off in the mornings. If you think it'd make you look cooler, you could ride in the back seat behind the cage. Dad, just don't. I threw open the door of the cruiser before he could say anything more, and I ran as he laughed behind me. Kyle was already waiting for me at the flagpole. He'd found Kimber, too. Dude, you almost missed first bell, he said to me. I know, I'm sorry. Whose class are you in? Kimber was wearing a red sweatshirt and leggings with frogs on them. Her curly orange hair was brushed into ringlets, and her lips were pink and shiny. She never looked prettier, and I was surprised to realize that I'd never really seen Kimber as a girl. Mr. Diamonds. Me too, she said cheerfully. Lucky, Kyle scoffed. I'm in Mrs. Tsveti's. Only 2 fourth-grade teachers, and I get the crappy one. Kimber grimaced. Yeah, my mom had her when she was a kid. What's wrong? What'd she say? Just that she's strict, and she gives out homework on the weekends. Oh, the weekends? Fuck! Excuse me, Mr. Landy? I immediately recognized the tall man that had suddenly appeared behind us and behind the white-faced Kyle. Sorry, I mean, dang. Kimber giggled. I'm sure you did, he nodded. Oh, Sheriff Cleary. Even though I'd only met him a few times, I liked my dad's boss, and he clearly liked me. Well, hello, Sammy. Are you excited for your first day? Sheriff Cleary crossed his arms in front of him and widened his stance imposingly, but he gave me a wide smile. Yes, sir. And then added lamely, so what are you doing here? I give a presentation to the 5th and 6th grades about safety when I about walking to and from the school. Yeah, gives it every year, Kyle muttered. Cool. I smiled. Sheriff clearly nodded at me and then turned and walked away. I looked around confused. Where's Kimber? She took off. She's annoyingly on time to everything. And as if to illustrate his point, the bell rang. We both ran up the stairs and inside. I walked into class and saw that Kimber had saved a spot next to her at the back. Mr. Diamond, a short, round man of 40 or so, nodded at me when I came in. Mr. Walker, I presume. Yeah, that's me, I mumbled as I rushed past him to the desk next to Kimber. Welcome to Drisking Elementary, and for the rest of you, welcome back. Go Grizzlies. The class echoed a reluctant and subdued, Go Grizzlies. Kimber introduced me to the other kids in the class throughout the morning. Most of them were nice, if sort of underwhelmed by me. They said their hellos and asked where I was from and conversed until the end of an unimpressed, okay. A group of girls who sat near the front snuck looks at us all morning and snickered. I asked Kimber who they were, and she just shrugged. During our second break, they came over to talk to me. Are you friends with Kimber? A tall, dark-haired girl asked me. Yeah, I answered and looked over at Kimber. She was watching me with worried eyes. Are you related to her? No? I didn't think so because you don't have orange hair. I didn't know what to say to that. You don't have to be friends with her, you know, said the second girl with the oddly round face. But I want to be friends with her. The third girl behind the other two snorted. She had pretty auburn hair and a rude upturned nose. Well, if you do, you're going to be in the ugly kid group, the first girl warned. And once you're in that group, you can't leave it ever. Okay, well, better than the bitchy group, I said. Rude nose and round face gasped, but dark-haired girl smiled. We'll see, she said. And the three returned to the corner of the room. I sat back down next to Kimber, feeling like a badass. It's the first time that I ever used a swear word in front of anybody other than Kyle. What did they say to you? Kimber asked nervously. They said that you're too pretty to be near them and that you make them look gross, so we have to stay away from them. Liar, Kimber answered, but I could tell that she was smiling. We met Kyle in the cafeteria at lunch, and he had nothing but bad things to say about Mrs. Tsveti. The old and mean woman, and she made everyone come up and say something about themselves, even though the class only had 14 kids and they all knew each other already. When the bell rang for recess, I went to throw my lunch away with Kyle, and I bumped into a kid that I hadn't seen before. Hey, you Sam Walker? The kid asked. Yeah? Your sister's dating my brother. Oh, man, Kyle laughed. Your sister's dating a Whittaker? Shut up, Kyle. Oh, she's going to be Whitney Whittaker. As funny as it was, I couldn't help but be a little surprised. I mean, it's not that I'd been paying attention, but I'd only seen Whitney out of her room once over the entire summer. Where did she meet him? I asked the Whittaker kid. I don't know, probably at his job. His job where? He works at Drisking Water. I mean, that didn't make any sense to me, but I shrugged it off. I did remember that my mom was giving Whitney some Menial tasks like getting the car washed and setting up some utilities to get her out of the house. And maybe she met him once and they started dating over text. I mean, teenagers are weird. The rest of the school week followed much like the first. We were well into the first month when I heard someone mention the skin men again, and we were out in the playground and Kyle and I were trying to start a fire with 2 large wood chips. I just given myself a splinter when the distant sound of metal grinding on metal flooded over the playground, silencing every one of us. Borrassca, I said in awe. Yep, said Phil Saunders. Skin men killed again. Hey, Kyle said only babies believed in the skin men. I threw in an accusatory look at Kyle. They do. Phil's just stupid. I am not. Ask Danielle. She's seen them. Phil scanned the playground and then yelled at a blonde girl who was talking to Rude Nose. Hey, Danielle, come here. The blonde girl rolled her eyes but came skipping over anyway. What do you want? I told you Kayla doesn't like you, Philip. No, tell them about the skin men. Phil gestured to the air around us, which was filled with a metallic scraping coming down from the mountain. You tell them. No, you saw them, so you gotta tell them. I didn't see them. Paige saw them. Oh. An uncomfortable silence descended. You guys are weird, Danielle said before flipping her hair into our faces and leaving. Who's Paige? I asked. Her sister, Phil said. Yeah, Paige disappeared when we were like 5, Kyle said. After she saw the skin men, Phil added. The sound from the mountain abruptly ended, and the subdued atmosphere of the playground disappeared with it. When the bell rang, Kyle lined up in his class line, and since Phil was in my class, I made sure that I was behind him. The teachers began to count us off. Hey, what else do you know about Borrassca? I whispered to him. My brother said, that's where people go when they disappear. To Borrassca. What happens to him there? Bad things, he said, and then shushed me when I asked him what that meant. The year dragged on, and it wasn't until Christmas break that I heard the machine at Borrassca again. It was December, and there was a thick blanket of snow on the ground, which only served to amplify the noise from the mountain. I sat in my room listening to it for several minutes, trying to decide what was happening in that place, that bad things happen. I saw my dad's cruiser pull up out of the window, and I went down the stairs to greet him. As I passed my sister's door, I heard her giggling in that annoying teenage girl kind of way, and I hoped Kimber never got like that. Hey, Dad! I skidded on the landing just as he opened the door. My dad stomped the snow off his boots, then threw open his arms. Sammy, how many years has it been? He joked. It was true. I mean, I hadn't seen much of my dad lately since he was working so much, doing what I didn't know since it was the quietest, lamest town ever. Mom thought the sheriff was grooming Dad for his job since Cleary was so old, and Dad never really agreed or disagreed with her. He only had been at the department for 7 months, after all, and he doubted that people in the county would vote for him. Hey, Dad, did you hear that? That machine-sounding noise outside? Yep, I hear it in town every now and then. Do you know what it is? I asked the sheriff about it. Told me the noise comes from private property up in the Ozarks. Is the property called Borrassca? I asked. I have no idea. Borrassca? Where did you hear that? I shrugged. Kids at my school? Well, it's nothing to worry about, Sammy. Probably just some logging equipment. But the place is called Borrassca. Like, have you heard that name before? No, I haven't heard that before. Dad pulled his boots off and shrugged off his coat, looking towards the kitchen. I could tell I was losing him. Okay, have you ever heard of the skin men? Skinned men? Good God, Sam, is your sister telling you these stories? No. But he wasn't listening to me anymore. Whitney, he yelled up the stairs. No, Dad, Whitney doesn't even talk to me. I heard a door creak open upstairs. Whitney peered over the railing, phone in hand, an annoyed look on her face. Are you trying to scare your brother? Dad demanded. Dad, no, I said again. Whitney shot me a betrayed look. Seriously? As if I'd waste my time. You aren't telling him stories about the skinned men? No, Dad, I told you I heard it at school, I said. Whitney gestured to me as if to say, see? All right, well, you kids need to start getting along. You're family, for Christ's sake. Whitney rolled her eyes, and when Dad walked into the kitchen, she stuck her tongue out at me. Real mature, Whitney, I yelled up at her, but she was already gone. I'll tell Dad about your boyfriend. Christmas came, Christmas went, with a surprising smoothness at our house. Whitney and I got everything that we had on our lists, which was a first for us. The town may be smaller, but Dad's paychecks were clearly better. I wore my new Rams parka on the first day back to school after Christmas break. Kyle fawned over it, and Kimber showed off the blue pencil necklace that her mom had gotten her for Christmas. Kyle and I feigned interest, but it was done poorly. Kimber knew, but just seemed happy that we cared enough to fake it. As we said goodbye to Kyle for the morning, Kimber was suddenly slammed from the side. Kyle caught her before she fell, and I spun around angrily to see the dark-haired girl whose name I'd learned was Phoebe Dranger, laughing and walking away from us, along with the round-faced girl. "Hey, you're bad people who make bad life choices," Kyle yelled at them. "And when I'm your boss someday, I'll make you clean bathrooms." "Yeah, and if Kyle's your boss, then you know you messed up," I added. Kyle and I high-fived and turned to Kimber, but she wasn't sharing our victory. She was trying to hide the tears on her face. "Hey, don't sweat those girls, Kimber. I mean, nobody likes them. People are just nice to them because they're related to the Prescotts." Kyle tried to give her an awkward pat on the back, but Kimber turned away from him and ran in the opposite direction. "Man, I hate those girls. Like, I really hate them," I said. "I know, they're bitches," Kyle answered, mouthing the last word as he looked over his shoulder for any lurking adults. "No, I'd better get to class and make sure that they don't try to talk to her again. There's an assembly this morning, no class until after lunch." "What, seriously? That's awesome. Do we have to sit by all of our classmates, or?" "No, usually, but we'd better get there quick so that we can get a good seat in the back," Kyle said as we started walking. "What's the assembly for?" It's either DARE or it's a History Society presentation." "What's DARE?" You don't dare, as in like, don't you dare do drugs or you're grounded till you're dead?" "Oh, okay. I hoped it was the history thing then." We found Kimber already in the auditorium. She'd collected herself and saved us both seats at the back of the room. She waved us over, and the puffy, stern Mrs. Sveti walked onto the stage. "Hello, fourth grade students. This morning we have a special presentation just for you from the Historic Preservation Society of Drisking. If you have questions during the course of the lecture, please raise your hand." "Like that'll happen," Kyle laughed. "Now, I will introduce you to Mr. Wyatt Dowding, Mrs. Catherine Scanlon, and of course, Mr. James Prescott." "What? Jimmy Prescott? Not his dad? That's so weird." "Dude, Thomas Prescott has done this presentation every year for like 20 years, Kyle said. "It's definitely weird." "It's not weird," Mike Stutton from behind us said. He leaned forward. "Tom Prescott went crazy like a year ago. Didn't do the presentation last year, and my sister was here either." "I don't like Jimmy Prescott." Kimber shook her head. "It gives me the heebie-jeebies. His dad was so much nicer. He's like a grandpa." The presentation was slow and boring, and Mr. Dowding and Mrs. Scanlon talked about the first settlers here, the Cherokee, the Trail of Tears. They talked about Alexander Drisking discovering a motherlode of ore in the mountain and settling here with his family to mine and refine the iron. And then James Prescott took the stage. And there he was telling the story of his family's early journey to the town and their role in revitalizing Drisking itself in the late 50s. The last part was the most interesting of it all, and I found Jimmy Prescott to be infallibly charismatic and entertaining. I was so busy laughing at his jokes and hanging on his every word that by the end of the presentation, I realized I'd actually learned quite a bit. Some of that I was interested enough in to ask a question, which Kyle warned me was committing social suicide. Mr. Prescott scanned the room, answered a few other questions before he finally got back to me. Yeah, you in the back. Mr. Prescott, why did the mines close? What happened? I asked. Very good question, young man. What'd you say your name was? Sam? Sam Walker? I believe I met your father the other day at the sheriff's office. Welcome to Drisking. As for your question, most of the mines were closed in 1951 after a long period of unprofitability. The mountain simply ran out of iron ore. The mills, refineries, all abandoned. The town suffered for years. The miners, their families, they all moved away. Stores went out of business. Schools closed. Drisking became a ghost town. Now, that would have been the end of it if it weren't for the stubborn families like mine who refused to leave. We refused to get up and leave this town after many, many, many years of hard work. Dristing eventually became this picturesque little haven in the Ozarks that it is today. I hope that answered your question. I sat back down and Kyle shook his head at me. Bro. The assembly suffered through another 15 minutes of awkward Q&A until Mrs. Sveti finally cut us all loose. We were released into the cafeteria to wait for lunch lines to open. Kyle, Kimber, and I sat in our usual corner. That was so boring, Kyle whined. When are they going to figure out that no one cares about Drisking's history? But seriously, I fell asleep like 3 times. Kimber nudged me. Sam seemed to care, she teased. I just wanted to know about the mines. I mean, mines are creepy. That's all. Yeah, but all our mines are blown up. You can't go in them anymore, Kyle said. Blown up? I asked. Kimber nodded. Some kids died after going into the mines, so the city set off some controlled blasts to implode the caverns. At least that's what my mom says. They messed up, though, and I heard that they blew up the water table, or they poisoned it or something. What? How'd you know that? Kyle asked. Kimber shrugged. Heard my dad talking about it. They use, like, C4 or something? I guess. Wait, so, like, we're all gonna drink the water, so we have C4 in our bodies and we could just explode at any minute? Kyle said. Do you think that's what happened to all the missing people? I asked him. Just sit there and then one day, boom? Yeah, dude. Kyle grabbed my shoulders. And that's where the skin men come from. I made the international symbol of mind blown. We all laughed hysterically. You guys are dumb. Kimber rolled her eyes, but then she laughed when Kyle fell on the floor pretending that he was exploding. I remember thinking in that moment that I was happy. I was happy here in Drisking with these 2 people. Happier than I'd ever been anywhere else. It was the last truly happy moment I ever had. Less than an hour later, Mr. Diamond's phone rang and he exchanged a few quiet words with the person on the other end. His eyes flicked up to my desk and, it was hard to be surprised then when he hung up and asked me to come up to the front. Now, when I got there, he told me that my mom was waiting for me in the office and I was going to go home for the day. I traded a confused and worried look with Kimber, and then I packed up my backpack, I went to the office, and when I got there, my mom was crying. We drove home in strained silence. I was too afraid to ask what was wrong. Mom parked the car a block from our house, which was blocked in by several police cars. When an explanation didn't come, I broke the silence myself. Is it Dad? I asked quietly, holding back tears. No, honey, Dad's fine. Then what happened? Whitney never made it to school this morning. Her mom broke over my sister's name. Oh, no, Mom, I think she just ditched, I said quickly. I saw her leave this morning, and it was like really early, like 6, and she was with her friends, Pete Whittaker and that kid, Taylor. We know about that, Sam. But they made it to school, and Whitney wasn't with them. They said that she wanted to stop by the Circle K near Drisking High, so they left her there, and no one has seen her since. Well, my brain struggled to come up with an explanation. Maybe she's ditching. No, honey. My mom put the car back in drive and drove up to her house, parking behind a police cruiser. The police, as well as your father, think that Whitney is with Jay. But she has a new boyfriend here. We found all her books on the floor in her room this morning. Half of her clothes are gone, along with some cash from your dad's. But right now, I think that she's hitched a ride to St. Louis, and she's with Jay. The sheriff's office is trying to contact the boy's parents now. Whitney? Run away? Anyone who knew my sister knew that she was prone to dramatic and empty threats. Plus she was dating Chris Whittaker's older brother, Pete. I was sure of it. We walked up the steps and into a house filled with stale coffee and quiet rumors. I tried to remember if Whitney herself had ever actually confirmed that she was dating Pete. But I drew a blank. When we walked into the kitchen, I saw my father sitting at the table, staring at phone records, head in his hands. He looked up when I came into the room and gave me a weak smile. Hey, buddy. Dad, I have to tell you something. I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder and turned up to look at a solemn Sheriff Cleary. Everything and anything you might know, son, no matter how trivial you think it is. I nodded and sat down at the table with my dad as my mom handed the big man a cup of coffee. "Here you go, Sheriff," she said weakly. "Please, Mrs. Walker, call me Killian." My mother nodded and retreated back into the darkened corner to talk quietly with Sheriff Cleary's wife, Grace. "What do you know, Sam?" my dad asked as he rested his chin on his hands, a mock symbol of prayer, as though I may deliver him from his suffering. "Okay, well, I heard that Whitney has a new boyfriend, that guy Pete Whitaker, that she's been hanging out with. And I saw them, and I saw Taylor Dranger leave this morning before me." "What time did they leave?" asked the sheriff. "I don't know. It was like before 6. He nodded. "That matches the statement of Taylor Dranger and the Whitaker boy." My father's head sunk low into his hands, and I knew that I'd let him down. But I rushed. "I don't think that she went back to St. Louis because she was dating Pete, and I don't think she wanted to be with her boyfriend back home anymore." "I understand that, son. But a teenage girl's mind's a complicated thing. Many officers are trying to get a hold of the boyfriend back home in St. Louis." Cleary nodded to my father. "Now why don't you head up to your room and let us work, Samuel?" I looked at him in surprise. "What? No, I want to stay down here. I mean, I can help." "No, son, there's nothing more you can do here. You've been a good brother. Now, let us handle this." "But I can help." "You already have." "Dad!" I looked over at my dad with begging eyes. "Go to your room, Sam." "Dad, now." I was so angry, I did the only thing that I could think of to make my rage known. I stomped upstairs, I slammed the door, and then I sat on my bed in disbelief. The tears came then, and I laid there feeling helpless, worthless, and scared for my sister. I thought about all the places Whitney could be. Was she scared? Was she alone? Was she dead? When the sun began to set, I finally got out of bed and I went to check my email. I was expecting lots of messages from Kimber and Kyle, but there was only this one. Did she go to the treehouse? I sat staring at the computer screen for almost a minute. Kimber's words from last echoed into my brain. "If you enter the treehouse without the proper ceremony, you'll disappear, and then you'll die." I didn't buy that Whitney had gone to the Circle K that morning, and I especially didn't believe that she'd hitched out of town. Nothing they were saying downstairs made any sense if you knew my sister. But maybe this did. Maybe she and her boyfriend went to the treehouse to make out or something, and maybe he'd left her there. Maybe she'd gotten lost. Or maybe the skin men found her. That was the worst thought of all. I didn't need to sneak out because the police were too busy with my parents to care about me anyway. I snuck my bike out of the garage and I rode the 3 miles to the West Rim Prescott Ore Trail. When I got there, I saw 2 bikes already locked to the signpost, and my 2 best friends sitting in the snow next to them. "I knew you'd come," Kyle said when I pulled my bike up, and Kimber ran in to hug me. "I'm so sorry, Sam." There was really nothing for me to say, and they didn't push. Kimber took my arm and we started up the trail. The silence between us was stretched, it was uncomfortable. We trudged through the snow, and all the while I searched for the telltale footprints of others, but the snow was coming too fast. The hike up the mountain was harder and wetter than when we had come in the fall, and when Ambercott Fort finally came into view over the ridge, it was a welcome sight. The sun was getting low, and we hadn't brought flashlights. I fell as I ran up to the tree, calling my sister's name to the quiet wild. Kyle was right behind me and leapt impressively into the rope ladder, climbing quickly up the planks. I kept calling Whitney's name, waiting for Kyle to yell that he'd found her or that there was at least some sign of her. Then I heard Kimber quietly say my name from where she stood at the triple tree. I ran over and I tried to follow her eyes to confirm what I already knew was there. And there I found it, freshly carved near the top. Whitney W. My breath froze in my chest, my vision blurred with unwelcome tears. And as the sun took its last desperate breath before plunging into the deep of the horizon, a deafening, metallic whir sang out from the wilderness and spilled down the mountainside. Thank you guys so much. That was Borrassca by C.K. Walker. Everybody, thank you so much for coming over to hear Myuu play, to hear me read. I cannot thank you for always having us back for SanJapan. You all are wonderful. If you guys give us a few minutes, we're going to go to the table back over there, too, so we can actually be able to see you guys and say hello and everything. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.